Hello and welcome to the Rebel Entrepreneur podcast. This episode is all about student loans. The details will be about the English system. However, some of the concepts and the ways to think might apply around the world. And we're going to talk all about debt and whether university is worth it or not. And I have two special guests with me today. Number one, my wife, Katie Donegan, is back.
Hello, you can't get rid of me.
You're kind of taking over the show. I love it.
I don't know. I still feel like I'm kind of demure and mellow and quite quiet and don't take over too much.
We will put a vote out to see if you believe Katie is demure. We also have with us Al. Al is the building manager for the new Rebel Business School office headquarters. What do you call it? Rebel HQ?
I like headquarters.
Rebel HQ in Westminster,
What about
London.
world headquarters?
One day.
Global headquarters.
Well, it is the world headquarters of the Rebel Network,
it is.
definitely.
Gaff manager.
Welcome to the show, Al.
Very nice to meet you guys. Well, I've met you guys, but very nice to be here.
Thank you.
First podcast. Let's get it.
And you probably know this, Katie and I are right in the middle of running Rebel Finance School at the moment. And with Rebel Finance School, we set out to help people take control of their finances and make progress in what they're doing with money.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, week one is all about how big is your gap, cash flow. Week two is net worth, how much have you kept. Week three is money beliefs. Then week four is debt. And in week one, we got an interesting question, which was like, the interest rates on student loans have gone up significantly. They're now 7%. Should I pay it off quickly? And our opinion at the time was it's still a debt. Still a debt. Pay it off if interest rates go up. But actually then people commented like, should we definitely? How should we look at it? And that sent Katie into research mode. And I lost you for about a day.
Yeah, it was a day to 3/4 of a day to a day. I scurried off and I did lots of research to fully understand how student loans work, when you have to pay them back and all the ins and outs of it. And so we thought we'd do some content to help people figure out how it works and what the options are around student loans in England specifically. And we're not even saying UK, because within the UK there's different deals, whether depending on which country or which of the home countries you're in.
Yeah, Scotland has a completely different system. Wales has a different system. Let's not even go to Northern Ireland. I have no idea. And that also made us think, because we were with Al in the building. We were talking about Al's net worth and how we could build it. And Al went off to look up his student loan on the government website. What happened, Al?
It was the first time I actually checked it since I left uni, which was 4 years ago now.
Okay. And before you checked it, what was your guess as to how much student loan you had?
I knew it was quite high, but I didn't expect it to be like that. I was kind of maybe looking around 60, maybe 50,000. That would have been like, okay, cool. Like, that's uni. But when I checked it, it actually turned out to be like 80,000.
Yeah, £81,000.
Yeah, that struck a chord somewhere. Yeah.
Well, that's a big number.
Yeah, that's not even. I don't even feel like I've earned that much in my lifetime, and for them to be able to like, now you are debted 80,000. It's like, I don't even know where to start.
And we were there with you when you looked at it, weren't you? So we could see Al's face and kind of the blood drain from it. And I was very impressed with your reaction, Al, because you're like, I'm going to get it. I'm going to smash that. I'm going to get rid of that. And I had just been doing all that research around it. And I was like, whoa, there's some things to think about here. So the purpose of this podcast is to talk through those things with Al and say like, okay, how do we approach this? How do we think about this? And help other people as well listening to understand how they can think about it as well.
So there's a bunch of rules around student loans in the UK, and they have student loan, what was it called? Group 1, Group 2?
Different plans
Plan 1, Plan 2.
Depending on when you went to university. So Al went between 2012 and 2023, so he is Plan 2. Am I right in saying that, Al?
I think so. That's what It says on my paycheck anyway.
Yeah, and they've just released Plan 3, which is actually far worse than
Plan
your
5,
plan.
actually.
Plan 5.
I don't know what happened to 3 and 4.
They skipped 3 and 4.
I think one of them's Scottish, but yeah, they jumped over those.
So I think several of the bits here are
Oh, can we do a disclaimer at this point?
Yes, we can do a disclaimer,
We
Katie.
are not financial advisors. This is not regulated advice. This is not advice at all, because we are not able to give financial advice. This is just our opinion, thinking through how it works and making suggestions about how you might like to go and think about it yourselves. And that includes Al to go away and think and make his own decisions, make your own decisions. And it's just trying to help and think through the options.
And I think a key piece of the Donegan philosophy is clarity.
Exactly.
Understanding the rules, the amounts, the interest rates, the options. The clearer you can be about what debt you have, what are the terms of said debt, and how are you going to pay it back, or if it's even worth paying it back. Clarity is power in all of these situations, and that is what we want to get to. So how do we start, Katie? Do we start with some of our revelations? Do we talk about low income versus high income? How do we start?
I think we start with the situation, because you said clarity is power, right? So we said that Al's debt is £80,000 and he's on plan 2, which then I'm like, okay, I need to understand, or we need to understand
what is plan 2?
What that means. So if you look on the government website, they've got it quite clearly. I'm quite impressed with the government website sometimes, and this is one of those times.
You just have to read it. To everyone out there who's stuck their head in their sand about student loans, please just read it. Just look at it. We've got to have that understanding.
So if you look at Plan 2 on the government website, it says that the point at which you have to start to pay it back is the April after you graduate, and only if or when you're earning over £27,295. And at that point, you pay 9% of anything above that 27,295. You're not paying 9% on the whole thing. You pay 9% on anything over that amount, over that 27,295.
So if you earn £100 more than that, you pay £9 back on your student loan.
Which is
the basic equation.
9% of the £100.
Exactly.
And then you think, okay, what's the interest rate? Because Rebel Finance School, we talk a lot about interest rate and how that works.
The higher the interest rate, the more it should worry us.
And actually, for Plan 2 loans, if you're earning under that 27,295, the interest rate is RPI, which is a measure of inflation. So actually, it's not gaining in real terms, meaning it's not going up faster than inflation. So that's quite nice, actually. It's saying, well, you're not earning enough to pay it back. We'll make sure that it doesn't grow faster than inflation, but it's still growing. And then when you start to earn above that, the interest rate changes the more you earn, up to a maximum of inflation plus 3%. And even this, you can sort of start to see Al's eyes glaze over a little bit and be like,
what are these figures? How do I even work this out?
Think about this. And we're recording this session in July of 2023, and inflation is pretty high at the moment. So the government has actually capped it. It's not anything, well, it is to do with RPI, but it's not actually RPI or RPI plus this 3%. It's been capped at 7.1% because we're in a time of high inflation. And even then you think, okay, 7.1, that sounds quite high. And our original thinking, mine and Alan's, as we were helping people think about this on Rebel Finance School, was like, that's expensive.
It's compounding against you.
We need to encourage people to start paying this off. But actually, it's a lot more nuanced than that. There's a lot more to think about. And that's what we'll start to go into in this podcast and help Al think through his particular situation.
Yes, because the Donegans' general thoughts on interest rates are, if your interest rate on any debt, I don't care whether it's your mortgage, your student loan, your credit card, bank loan, doesn't matter. If your interest rate is between 0 and 3%, don't bother to pay it off quickly. Just set it to minimum and then get on with investing and building your wealth and doing the other stuff. If it is above 5%, pay it off quickly, because you're investing, if you're investing at the same time, you have a guaranteed return of 5% by paying off the debt.
Yeah.
And you may or may not earn more than that in index funds. And then between that 3 and 5, it depends how comfortable you are with debt. Some people hate having debt, and it's well, pay it off. Some people are quite comfortable, don't. Katie and I got a little bit more comfortable because we had our mortgage was like 4%, somewhere in the middle, and we invested instead of paying off our mortgage quickly.
The key there is quickly. We still were paying our normal payments.
We didn't stop paying it.
We just weren't overpaying, and that's the sort of thing that we think about here. Should I be overpaying because the interest rate has gone up?
Yes. So that's kind of how we think about it. Actually, if your mortgage was 5.25 or 6%, like there could still be an argument for paying off the minimum and investing instead. But the higher the interest rate is, like on average, an investment will, like an index fund, a global index fund, could produce 10% a year on average.
Over the long term.
But so if you're paying 7% interest, like it's actually not that much difference. Just pay the interest down.
And slight caveat here that at Rebel Finance School, we talk about the steps to getting wealthy. And the first step is to have an emergency fund of £1,000. So if you haven't done that, it's not time to start paying the debt off. And that might sound counterintuitive and you're thinking the debt's compounding against me, but we need to have a little bit of a buffer so that when things happen, you don't just need to borrow more money again. So the first step in any of this is to get that £1,000 emergency fund and then start to look at debts and what we need to do about those.
Yeah, normally we have step 2, pay off expensive debt, which for us is anything over 5%. Which is where we then come into student loans have now crossed that mark, whereas before they weren't. Step 3 is then to expand your emergency fund to 3 to 6 months, and step 4 is to start buying assets.
3 to 6 months of living expenses, not your earnings.
Yeah. So we're currently like on student loans, expensive debt. The police are coming for the student loans right now. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. But the interesting thing here is, in the UK, and this is different for America.
Or other countries.
Yeah,
we don't know how it works in other countries.
In America, your student loan debt stays with you for life. Like, it is yours forever.
And you have to make payments regardless of your employment situation.
Whereas in the UK, you have to earn over a certain amount to do it. So we're in a little bit of a better position.
Yeah, I feel a little bit better.
You're here.
That's ruthless.
And on plan 2, you have a 30-year period. If you haven't paid back that loan in 30 years, it gets wiped out. Which for plan 5, the new one, for those of you taking university now, that's gone up to 40 years.
Yep.
So they've actually made it far worse for people going to university now, which we're going to ask you your feelings on whether current generation should go to university later, Al, but let's hold that for now. So that being said, it will get wiped out after 30 years. So the question here comes, are you likely to earn enough to pay back the loan or not in that period? And we have 2 distinctions. So we'll run you both through the distinctions and then our thoughts on it. Number 1, if you're a lower income earner, like you might earn $25,000 a year, you will never pay it off. And that's okay, because it just gets wiped out after 30 years. You kind of have to accept it as a 9% tax on your income for going to university. That's your tax.
And people kind of worry and saying, well, I get these statements through and the interest is accruing, meaning
faster.
The interest is growing and I'm, not kind of cutting into, like eating into paying this loan off. But actually, if you're not going to earn that much over this 27,295 threshold, the amount above which you need to start paying back, that might not even matter because you might not even end up paying off what you had originally borrowed.
Exactly.
So there's no need to kind of worry about the fact that the interest is growing and to just think of it as a tax rather than it's being this loan that you have. Thinking about it as a tax on your income rather than, oh my goodness, I have this loan and it keeps increasing because I'm not able to even pay the interest off. Because you might not even get to that point. You might, if Al, you earn 30 grand for your 30 years of your career, you wouldn't even pay off that 80 grand, let alone the interest.
Exactly.
However, if you are a higher earner, if you're earning really good money, you probably will pay it back.
Yeah.
Because you might earn 60 grand a year and then you're paying 9% of 30. Like, you're paying it off
It'll
quite
be easier
quickly.
to pay off as well.
Yeah. Earning more money is always a good thing.
A point on that is that sometimes people think, well, should I keep my earnings low? Should I deliberately keep my earnings below 27,295? So
Al's looking like he's had that thought. Look at his eyes.
It's not that I've had that thought. I've kind of sort of done that. So when I was...
Have you?
Yeah. So when I opened Rustic, that was a kind of whole thing about it where it's like...
Rustic was your business.
Rustic was my business. And then it was, okay, I can pay myself an amount that I basically kind of cut myself to that wage, like that salary, so I wouldn't have to pay anything. And
you're one of many people we've met who have that thought. If I pay myself X, I don't have to pay that back. Exactly. I just wanted to say to everyone out there who's listening, that's daft. Suppressing your earnings to avoid paying it back. It's a 9% tax. You still get to keep the other 91%. Well, you've got to pay tax on the other 91%, exactly. But you know what I mean.
Yeah. You're never worse off by earning more. And it's not like it's wiped out after 30 years if you never cross the threshold. No, regardless of whether you're earning above or below the threshold, it's wiped off after 30 years. Because I think some people think, oh, I need to keep it below that for 30 years in order for it to be wiped off. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it wasn't going to work at all. I couldn't pay myself what I was paying myself, and I was still live in London as well. It wasn't going to work.
Yeah, and it's not cheap living in London.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
So if you're a higher income earner, you probably are going to pay it off.
And what's that? Like, roughly?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Because there is no ceiling to your income, Al. You're young, you're attractive, you're smart. You could earn a lot of money in the future. So there's no ceiling to your income. The more you earn, the quicker you pay it off. But there is a line, and we need to do the maths, and that's what we're coming on to. And that's what we'll say to everyone listening to this, is do the maths. Even if you're American, do the math. There's no S in America on maths.
Well, the Americans wouldn't actually do this because we don't know how their system works. However, if
they will do the maths on their system. But do the maths to understand the most efficient way to pay it off or not pay it off. Just clarity is power. Yeah. We have to understand the figures, whatever system you're in, whatever system.
And obviously it's quite tricky as well, isn't it? Because you don't know what your earnings are going to be over the next 30 years. So we need to kind of play with it and make some assumptions and try a few different scenarios as well to see what might happen, and then to kind of take our best guess and move forward and say, okay, for now, I'm going to choose whether I'm going to start overpaying or not. And then you can always change your approach later. The thing to realise, though, is if you voluntarily overpay in the UK or the English system, you can never get that back and say, whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to. Can I have some back? You can't. So you need to think carefully about this. And Martin Lewis on Money Saving Expert has some excellent content as well, which we can link to in the notes and in the description of this video to help you how to think about that as well.
So high rate income earner, you might well pay it back. The thing to think about then is if you are going to pay it back in your lifetime, the longer you leave it, the more the interest rate builds, the more the interest you pay
builds. Yeah.
So the quicker you pay it off, like if you are going to pay it off, the quicker you pay it off, the less interest you pay, the cheaper it is to pay it down.
Yeah. And to add into the mix here, that the interest rate is linked to inflation. Sometimes inflation is much lower, as it has been before this and last year. So that was a much lower interest rate, and sometimes it's high. So then there's that to factor in as well and to think about. So
a couple of years ago,
pieces.
When we were talking about student loans, interest rates were very low. We were like, well, don't bother paying it off.
Or inflation was very low.
Well, inflation and interest rates are tied to it. So like, don't pay it off that quickly, but that's all changed.
Yeah.
One thing I would say is that when you do pay it off, it can be one of the biggest pay rises you'll ever get, because it's like instantly earning 9% more because you've stopped giving that 9% to the government. You get it. So when Katie finished paying off her student loan, she got a bump that was worth hundreds and hundreds a month.
See, that's incentive.
That's a lovely incentive.
That's incentive for me.
It's really nice.
If you're going to pay it off overall, it's just few things to think about here.
Yeah, and the big thing is the freedom from having that payment to make, the freedom from those different bits that comes. So that's the kind of like some distinctions about lower earnings and higher earnings. So we've actually created a flowchart, because obviously the Donegans will create a flowchart.
Cool.
And the first question to ask yourself, which I don't think we're going to be able to answer right now, we might have to go away and do the maths, is, am I likely to pay off my loan? So you've got 81 grand's worth of debt.
Yeah.
In your working career, how old are you, Al?
27.
27.
Well, it's related more, isn't it, to the time since Al graduated rather than his age?
No, I think it's related to his age, because it's how long is he going to work for? So how much is he going to earn?
Got ya.
So Al's 27, like the average retirement age, or the retirement age in the UK is like 68, which is, we can talk about that another day, Al. We can get that number down. But 27 to 68, you've got 31 working years left.
Cool. So I get like 1 year of like freedom, and then onwards. Cool.
So then the question is, if you're working for 31 years, like it will block out after 30, but are you likely to pay that off in those 30 years?
Just to add something in as well, is that Al, how long ago did you graduate?
4 years ago, 2020.
Okay. So we've got 26 years.
Oh, we got 26 years. So actually then, like, you just go, okay, will you pay it off in 26 years?
I highly doubt that's doable. Like, unless something drastically changes, like just money flow just comes in.
Well, let's sort of do a monetary example to try and help people to understand. So let's say...
Before we do that, can I add one piece to it?
Of course.
Thank you. So one thing is perspective of age.
Okay.
For the people out there who are 21, they can't imagine earning £30,000 a year. And then you get to 30 and you like worked the hardest of your life and you're earning like 30, 40 grand a year and you think you've made it. And then, do you know which years of your life have the most earning potential, Al? How old are you going to be when you make the most money in your life?
I'm going to say between 30 to 35, maybe 40 even.
Yeah, it's like your best earning years
like
generally your 40s and maybe even 50s.
Yeah.
That's when you will earn the most money. So from perspective, when you're 27 saying, I don't know if I'll ever earn that amount of money, like you could get to my age, really old, 45.
Quite old.
Thank you. And you could be earning 80 grand a year. You could be earning 90 grand a year. We don't know yet. That's what makes this question really hard to answer. But I just needed to add that perspective.
Yeah.
Because people listening to this are going, I'm borrowing X to go to university at this age. I can't ever see myself earning that much money.
But it is good perspective because now, like, I work well with formulas, and like if I know the goal, I can like start working towards that. So I feel like building some sort of formula to kind of tell me when I can pay it back, how much I would be wanting, how much I would need to be earning to be able to pay it back in full. And then obviously there's the vice versa, which is don't pay it back, other option.
Yes, yeah. Which this question, am I likely to pay off my loan? If yes, then we look at how can we get it paid off. If no, we look at, well, set it to the minimum, think of it as a tax and forget it exists.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of distinction. But Katie's going to put some actual numbers around this to bring it to life. Now I've added a little bit of old age perspective. Katie will add numbers.
We're a good team, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
You really are.
Which we can put in the notes in the description as well to help you to think about this, because I appreciate sometimes it's not that easy to process when you're having some numbers, listening to these numbers. So Al has to pay back 9% of anything he earns above 27,295, which is they call it the threshold. Above that, you pay 9% of anything. So let's, for example, say that Al earns 32,295, and I've chosen that number to make the maths a little bit easier. So that's £5,000 above the threshold. Let's say that that's the salary that he earns for that 26 years that we have left. So that's £5,000 above the threshold. And the way that it works is you pay 9% of that £5,000 each year. 9% of £5,000 is £450. So every year you have to pay £450 towards your student loan, and that's automatically taken from your salary. If you work for someone else, if you're self-employed, you need to set it all up yourself. So £450 a year for 26 years is £11,700.
Is that going to clear your 81 grand loan?
That's not even scraping. That's not even scraping. At least make it 2,000, 20,000 or something, but it's like 11,000. I just don't see the point. I don't like it's kind of like weight on your shoulder, and especially like seeing the numbers now, and it's like, why work all that time and like put in the hard work if I'm just going to be paying like that, and it's going to get cancelled after 30 years. So you're making me pay all of that money, and then in 30 years you're going to be like, okay, you've done enough.
Technically, you're only paying 11,700, and they're letting you off of £70,000 of student debt,
plus whatever interest accrues over that time.
Okay,
it's actually quite generous of the British government there, I believe.
Better than the Americans. So
well, then let's play with it and say, okay, what if you earn 10 grand more than that? So now you're £15,000 above the amount when you have to start paying it back.
And obviously your wage is not going to be flat, because it's going to increase over the years. So it's going to be lower when you're younger and go up a lot higher when you're older. So at the moment, Katie's just got a sort of average over your working lifetime to help us see. But that's going to change. So probably part of your homework is to start thinking about, like, what might it actually be? What could I earn? What is possible?
Yeah.
But let's do those numbers. If you earn 10 grand more.
Yeah. So we're now saying that in this example, Al earns 42,295, which is £15,000 above this threshold. 9% of that is £1,350 a year. Okay, times that by the 26 years that Al has left of his 30-year term of this loan, and that's just over £35,000. So even at that point,
you're not even paying half of it off.
And as well, you've got to think about what might happen over your life. So might you have a family and be looking after the kids at home? So you might not be working for some of those years even, and you might not be earning the threshold for those years. Maybe you have a part-time job around the kids. And these are the sort of things that you start to think about, which obviously maybe you might feel a long way off as well, because you're so young. You think, well, I don't know how my life's going to go. So there's these sorts of things to factor in. And a lot of people that come on Rebel Finance School and might be listening to this are probably a little bit older than Al, so have a bit more clarity of how their life's gone. They know
what their earnings are, where they're going with
exactly what career they're in, what their earnings prospects are. So actually this is probably a lot easier for them, because they're like, well, I work from home, or I'm looking after the kids, so I know my income is going to be below that threshold for a few years to come. So it makes the calculation a lot easier in that respect.
Yes. Al, how do you feel about all this? What are you thinking?
Like, it's literally like I have to earn double, pretty much, of what I'm earning now, and then I don't even pay half of it. So it's like, it's a bit of like I said, it's just way over my shoulders. And like knowing now that I'm 80,000 like in debt, that's like, yes, I'm a person who will take all the negatives and make it into a positive and be like, no, I'm going to fight this. But it's still like, it's like a race you're never going to win. And although, yes, the UK government are like called to cancel it after 30 years and stuff, but maybe the like living costs, or like the inflation that's happening right now, maybe calm down on that for the students at least.
Well, no, it should calm down for everyone. It always goes in cycles.
Yeah, calm down for everyone. But like,
and then it will go up again, and then it will go down again. Economics works in cycles.
Yeah. But it's good to see numbers. It's good to have it in numbers and be like, that's the goal. So, thank you.
So it feels like you're saying, like, it looks like you feel like you'd never pay that off, and that feels like
you're shackled.
Okay.
You know, like you're pretty much like chained, and you there's no like at the end of all of this, I want to be able to get my freedom, and still knowing that like after I retire, I still have that debt. It's kind of like I won't have the energy, or maybe I'm not working then to like actually pay it off.
So to actually pay it off, you'd have to average pretty much 61,000 for your entire career earnings to pay off that loan.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad. That is doable. That can be doable. 100% that's doable.
But then it becomes quite interesting, and you're going, well, okay, like you might earn more than that. You might earn a lot more than that. And then this is the bit. So some people will be listening to this and they've got 20 grand of student loan and they're earning 60 grand a year. Well, then they fall into the camp of, okay, you are going to pay it off within the time frame, pay it off quickly, get rid of it, overpay, like it's a debt, get rid of it.
Depending on the interest rate over the years, because at the moment, yes, it's high, but there's times when it's really low. Not. And that's one of the things we've factored into this flow chart that we've thought about as well.
Yes. And then I guess the final piece is like, well, okay, like Al, your loan is quite big for the university loans, the maintenance loans, all of that. It's actually quite a large amount. Like you may never pay it off. And we just have to accept that.
Okay.
And this is where we go, am I likely to pay off the loan? No. Think of it as a 9% tax. Do not have your net worth, that debt on your net worth tracker.
Okay.
Because it's not really a debt, it's just a 9% tax.
Okay.
And leave it at minimum payments and ignore it.
And even when you get those statements through each year where it says, now you owe 82,000 or whatever it is, because it's growing with interest and the amount that you're paying back isn't keeping up with that interest, but it's kind of made up. It's like, you're thinking of it as this tax because you're like, well, I'm never going to pay it off. And you could think of that as demoralizing, or you could think of it as like
freeing.
It's freeing because, it's just automatically taken from my salary. I'm contributing for my education. And the reason to not include it in the net worth tracker is because we talk about a lot at Rebel Finance School and Rebel Business School, what gets measured gets improved. Meaning the very act of monitoring that number makes you want to do something about it.
100%. 100%.
And if we've done the maths and said, well, actually, realistically, I'm not going to pay this off, or it doesn't make sense to pay it off, because any additional payments, if you never get to paying off the 80 grand, is lost. It's wasted money.
Mm.
So
the British government will like it, but from our perspective, it is wasted.
So
100%.
Having that on your net worth tracker or monitoring how much you have each month or how much debt you have each month is going to make you want to pay that off more quickly, because you see that number, or makes you feel bad, makes you think, oh, what can I do to get rid of this? So actually don't put it on there because you've just accepted it as the tax. If you do think you're going to pay it off and you do start to overpay, and actually remember as well, it's not binary, meaning you don't have to use all your spare cash to overpay. If you think you are going to pay it off, you could overpay a little bit. Then yes, include it in the net worth tracker, because that's something that you want to
get rid of.
But again, it's monitoring the interest rate, and the interest rate on the student loans will change depending what inflation is. So that also factors into it, and it's something that you monitor year to year. It's not make one decision now and leave it for the rest of time. It's okay, maybe I need to revisit this in a couple of years' time. Oh, I've got a new job and I've got a promotion and I've got a much higher salary. Oh, maybe I should revisit the student loan
and think about paying it off quicker. Like maybe in a few years' time, your earnings has gone up massively and you're actually thinking, I could nail this. Then you go, okay, I'm going to get out. But if you always earn that 30 grand a year mark-ish or plus, you're never going to pay it off. Just move on with life. Just forget it exists. It's a tax. Does that make sense, the difference between the two?
100%. So basically, if I'm earning below 30, just keep it as a 9% tax and just pay for your education.
Well, actually, we're looking at the figures, and if you earn 40 grand a year, you're never going to pay it off.
Even 40 grand.
Even 45, 50, you have to average 60 grand a year for the rest of those years to pay it off.
And literally, this is like talking about from today. From today, I have to be earning,
But you could earn 30 now and like 90 later to average 60.
But I think it's a lot more clearer now. I now know, like, okay, I'm not able to pay it off now. I'll just keep it as a 9% tax and just stick to that. But now I know when I can start paying it back. So once I hit that threshold of 60,000 and above, then I can start thinking about, okay, paying it back. But again, it's like paying it back.
Do the maths.
I think
do the maths first. Obviously, do the maths first before you start paying it
at
back.
that point, revisit it and think carefully about it, because like I said earlier, if you overpay, you can never get those overpayments back. So it's at that point to think about it. And actually, if you're kind of earning the average wage in the UK, it's not like you'd be able to put that much more to it anyway, because it's not, maybe you don't have that big a gap anyway. So it's not even a consideration. It's not even perhaps a possibility. So it's reconsider this, I don't know, once every couple of years, or if the trigger is that you're earning more, and you'll notice that in your payslip, because it will say your student loan deduction is X.
It's
and
X
you'll say,
hundred, and you're like, wow.
That's gone up. That's gone up. Oh, it's because I'm earning more. Oh, there's a trigger to think about reassessing this situation, doing the maths again, revisiting this and thinking again. It's so hard to make decisions for the next 26 years. Who knows what's going to happen? So that's why you have to revisit as and when things change. It's not a one decision and forget it. But it's to make a decision in the short term and park it and say, okay, this is the decision I've made for now. I don't have to keep rethinking about it every month. No, you just need to think about it when things change.
It's good. It's good. It's good that I know about it now, because like now I've kind of gone into like, working full time and having a salary and stuff. So it's a nice little challenge for me, basically. It's a nice little challenge of getting my freedom back. And I'm all about that.
I love that. Alan, the eternal optimist, always thinks you can earn more.
Yeah.
And actually, it's a lot easier to earn your way out of a problem than it is to save your way out of a problem.
Yeah.
And the key magic, if you can earn and save, you create a huge gap. And the gap is what creates the wealth over the long term and gets us out of these things. So there's a load of information there for everyone listening to it. We're going to put a link in the notes to the Money Saving Expert article. We'll
and
also
the
Gov website and to some of our content. And we're going to record a bit from the course tonight and split it out and put it as a YouTube video as well. So there's lots of information, lots of help there. If you're in a different country, you might think that you're blessed not having to think about this, or you might not. You might be thinking it's way worse in my country. What I would say to you is clarity is power. Know exactly the situation you're in, what the finances are, what the numbers are, and then start to plan for the future, because that's what you have to do. Clarity is power. Al, any closing remarks for anyone listening about student loans, university, closing thoughts for our lovely audience at the Rebel Entrepreneur?
Not really. Just side hustles. You have to be on side hustles now. You have to, anybody can be working a 9 to 5 and then doing a side hustle from 5 to 9. So just literally, I'm just trying to now earn. I'm still like in the, I don't know, just dip my feet into like the salary pool. So it's like, okay, now I know how much I'm earning, and it's it's an ongoing thing. I'm hoping now for like however many years, like this status is going to stay the same. So
we like you so far.
So far. But yeah, like it's definitely something to look out for, especially like after coming out of uni. Just check like how much you owe, so then you can have it at the back of your head. And then once you start earning, then it's there. It's not like, oh, why am I not getting paid enough? And it's because the student loan has been taken. So it's a good indication. And
I would just build on what Al's saying, and actually know before you go to university what you're going to buy and borrow. 100%. Well, also buy, like you're buying a degree
true.
with it.
That's true.
But what are you going to borrow to buy a degree? And then how is that going to work for you going forwards? Are you actually going to get a return on investment for your university degree? Is it going to help you get a good enough job to pay for itself? Like, let's actually think about that before we go into it.
Now, that's a big thing as well, because a lot of people, like, you're coming out of school and you're kind of taught compulsory subjects, and there's a much wider like range of things that you can do. So for me, I've always done art, graphics, photography, just on repeat for sixth form, GCSEs, and all that. So when it came to uni, it was like, let me choose something different, which is animation. But coming out of university, it was difficult trying to find an animation job. Like, literally no one was hiring. No, and it's obviously it's a creative industry, so it's very competitive. And then that's when I started thinking about freelancing. And freelancing actually gave me a little bit of motivation, because I was able to still do animation and earn money whilst learning about business and how to run my own business and like speaking to my clients and stuff. So that was really kind of empowering for me. Like, yes, I left uni with a degree, and no, I'm not in a design industry, but I'm still in the design industry and I'm working for myself, which for a lot of people is very nice to say. Like, to be able to be, I think I was like 25, and I'm still freelancing now. But to be able to say like, yeah, I run my own business and I'm earning my own money, it's very nice. It's very nice. So yeah, it's side hustles. Like, university is a good thing if, I don't know, like traditionally, like my parents would be like, no, it's either a doctor or a lawyer. If you want to do art, it's architecture. And it's like, okay, cool. But there are other options. There are definitely a lot of options. And plus, in the era that we're working, like we are in now, social media, just ridiculous amount of money that you can make just through content creating or whatever you feel is fun and people want to see. You can make money. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your thoughts, Al. Katie, what do you have to say to the audience? Do you have anything to add on this stuff for our audience before we wrap up?
Do the maths.
Do the maths.
Do the maths.
Know what you owe, what the interest rates are, how it works. Understand how it works, and then make the decision whether you're going to overpay or whether you're going to leave it and then reassess if when you earn more.
Doing the maths leads to clarity of your situation. Then you're making empowered decisions about your future. Clarity is power. Thank you for listening to the Rebel Entrepreneur Podcast, and please do the maths. Goodbye, everyone.